Week 16 means we're almost at the finish line of fantasy football, and every bit of edge you can get is crucial. And lucky for us, I've got the best stats to dig through every Week 16 game. Stats that NFL teams use from sites like Football Outsiders, PFF, and Sports Info Solutions to help you make the decisions you need to crush in whatever you're doing fantasy football-wise in Week 16. We'll go in order of the game, starting with Jags-Jets on Thursday Night Football. This game is currently a pick'em from Vegas, even though Zach Wilson is starting again at QB. And it is a tough matchup for what the Jags do best. Trevor Lawrence is up to 4.6 throws of 20-plus yards per game, one of the highest marks in the league. But the Jets have crushed opposing deep ball throwers, with a negative .51 estimated points added on those plays and a brutally low 23% completion rate. They also deflect passes at a league-high 26.4% rate, and hands on the ball could translate to picks. Trevor Lawrence overcame another tough matchup versus Dallas in Week 15, but his luck could run out against a Jets D that needs to cover for their QB. Zach Wilson didn't do a ton versus a soft Detroit defense in Week 15, but he gets another cushy matchup versus a weak Jags pass defense. Jags' 25% passing DVOA boost to opposing QBs is one of the worst marks in the league, along with a high .112 EPA on dropbacks. They also give up 36.6 yards per drive, which is 30th in the league. Zach Wilson will find ways to miss receivers with his bad 66% adjusted completion rate, but Jacksonville is 28th in DVOA versus wide receiver ones and 31st versus tight ends for a reason. Christmas Eve is our main slate for DFS this week, and it starts with the lowest Vegas total of the year in New Orleans versus Cleveland. The teams have a 31.5 combined total due to the storm expected to pound the Midwest, which could see gusting winds of up to 60 miles per hour. New Orleans should be able to play it safe and run the ball versus Cleveland's bottom of the league 46% rushing success rate. Maybe Alvin Kamara gets there after doing nothing with 23 touches in Week 15, with the Saints much less likely to pull off deep ball gimmicks with Rashid Shaheed due to the weather. Cleveland would also have a nice matchup in normal conditions. New Orleans is 29th versus wide receiver ones in DVOA with a 21% boost to the position. They generate QB hurries at a league low 4.5% rate, which is good news for a frequently pressured Deshaun Watson. The weather is a massive risk, but there is upside if conditions are somehow milder than expected. Cincinnati heads to New England for a matchup with the quietly shut down Patriots defense. New England is second in the league with a negative .106 EPA per play and a particularly brutal negative .114 EPA per dropback. They're also sixth in the league with just 28.5 yards per drive allowed. As I've mentioned before, Joe Burrow can find success in any situation, but he and his receivers are in an uphill battle, and it's hard to expect ceiling games. New England, they might be in for a field goal fest on their end. They kick field goals at a third in the league 19.7% rate, while Cincinnati forces everyone to kick with a 21% field goal rate per drive, and that compares to a low 18% touchdown rate per drive. Season-long players, you might want to take a shot at Nick Folk, but this feels like a grinded-out matchup unless Cincinnati overachieves through the air. Buffalo is a huge 8.5-point favorite heading into Chicago's potentially bad weather, which may limit their upside against a Bears D that is in fact bad news. Their .192 EPA per dropback is bottom of the league, and their 36.8 yards allowed per drive is 31st in the league. They're also 30th versus wide receiver ones according to DVOA with a 22% boost to the position. The Bills are no strangers to cold, so maybe they can produce, but the 24.3 implied total is a bit behind what you'd expect from Buffalo in this spot. As for Chicago, they would have a tough time moving the ball against Buffalo even without the weather. Bills stuff the run at a league-high 25% rate and have a negative 18% DVOA versus the run. They also give up a low 4.1 points per red zone visit. Justin Fields somehow hung in there versus Philadelphia. There's legitimately nothing on paper to like in this spot versus the Bills. Seattle heads to Kansas City as 10-point underdogs in the highest over-under of the week at 48 points. But you know they'll need to throw against the Chiefs offense that will score points. No Tyler Lockett, this could be a smash spot for DK Metcalf. The Chiefs are 32nd at defending wide receiver ones with a 24% DVOA boost to the position. 79% of the touchdowns and 68% of the yardage they've allowed has been through the air. The targets will concentrate for him and the defensive attention will too. But this is a ceiling spot for DK based upon matchup and game script. Kansas City should be able to pick their poison on how to beat Seattle's defense. Seattle allows a .103 EPA on dropbacks and a .021 EPA on run plays. They're also 28th in the league versus tight ends, which could be crucial for Travis Kelce. Kelce saw 10 targets and caught all 10 after Houston pushed Kansas City harder than expected. So you might need Seattle to do their part for Kelce to hit his best outcomes. But a Metcalf-Kelce pairing has the potential to blow up Week 16. The Giants and Minnesota surprisingly have one of the highest totals of the week, and Saquon Barkley projects to be popular after scoring 23 DK points in Week 15. It's a tough matchup on paper with Minnesota's negative .107 EPA versus the run, one of their only good spots defensively. While Saquon's ability to get volume is basically his biggest skill of the year, the Giants' 22.5 implied total indicates he'll at least get a shot to punch a TD in. Darius Slayton could be interesting leverage against that. The Vikings play zone D on 59% of dropbacks, and Darius Slayton has been the most targeted Giants player versus zone, with a 20% target rate and 1.9 yards per route run. You're playing Barkley if you have him in the playoffs, but for DFS, targeting the pass game could be a good move. All of Minnesota's key position players are in good spots against the Giants' defense. The Giants are 21st in DVOA versus wide receiver ones and 32nd versus tight ends, which is good news for Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. But they're at their worst against the run with a 10% DVOA boost at a .05 EPA per rush. If Kirk Cousins can survive the Giants' league-high 41% blitz rate, there are a lot of ways for the Vikings to succeed in all facets of their offense. Desmond Ridder will start again for Atlanta, and it's safe to wonder if he might be much better than he looked at his debut. Ridder had an 81% adjusted completion rate despite 13 for 26 passing in the box score versus New Orleans. He also ran 6 times, including 1 in the red zone. Baltimore is one of the worst teams versus throws 20-plus yards too, with a 1.1 EPA on those plays and a high 62% completion rate on deep throws. Now, the Ravens have played ugly since Lamar went out. This is an interesting game for Ridder and Drake London if Ridder continues to improve. With Lamar reportedly trending towards not playing again, it's safe to wonder if anyone but the Baltimore running backs produce. Atlanta's bad versus everything, with a 50% success rate allowed on each play. They're the worst in the air with a .155 EPA and 52% success rate on dropbacks. They also allow a gaudy 73% completion rate and .22 EPA on throws under 20 yards. Baltimore doesn't seem willing to pass right now, but if they do, maybe Mark Andrews could have his first good game in 10 weeks? Nah. Carolina's defense is the definition of average with a 4.6% defensive DVOA and a .004 EPA per play overall. But this feels like an Amon-Ra St. Brown spot for that reason. Carolina allows a 73% completion rate on throws of under 20 yards, and they're 17th in the league versus wide receiver ones according to DVOA. They also oppress the deep ball well with a 32% completion rate on throws over 20 yards and a high 9% interception rate on deep passes. Pair that with a negative .055 EPA on run plays, and you've got a recipe for Jared Goff and Amon-Ra dink and dunking their way up the field, much like Deontay Johnson did for Pittsburgh in Week 15. Carolina has more opportunity against the soft Lions defense, but feels murky for everyone besides DJ Moore. The .158 EPA per dropback that Detroit allows should help Moore out, and there's opportunity with the Lions allowing a league-high 39 yards per drive. But it's a split backfield for Carolina with Deonta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard, and the offensive volume is low with Darnold at QB. So there's potential for someone here to break out, but it does take some guesswork as to who that's going to be. With Dameon Pierce on IR, there's little hope for Houston to run on Tennessee. Titans D remains elite with a league best 34% rushing success rate allowed and negative .138 EPA per rush. You are able to beat them deep with their .87 EPA on throws over 20 yards and league worst 17% touchdown rate. It could be interesting for Chris Moore after being mediocre as a popular play in Week 15. But do you want to trust a Davis Mills, Jeff Driscoll timeshare to accomplish that? Derrick Henry is going to be treated as a lock versus Houston's run defense. And again, he's unlikely to fail even if he doesn't hit his ceiling. Houston isn't as bad as DVP numbers will say, with them basically average with a 0.6% defensive rushing DVOA and a negative .031 EPA per rush. With Derrick Henry, he has 41% of the Titans' total yardage and 43% of their overall touchdowns. Play him with confidence in your fantasy playoffs, but I'd be mindful of his high ownership on DraftKings. Washington should get obliterated by the Niners. The Niners are now best in the league with a negative .113 EPA per play and a negative 20% defensive DVOA. They're also second in the league with just 27.7 yards allowed per drive. With the Giants greatly decreasing their playoff odds on Sunday night, this could be a death knell for the Commanders' season. But San Francisco should have a similarly tough time against the Commanders' D that's carried them this year. Washington gives up a low 41.3% success rate per play, and they may kill my George Kittle best ball shares with third in the league defense versus tight end. With no Debo again, expect the Niners to do the bare minimum to win. With Christian McCaffrey probably is your best best shot to find a usable game for fantasy. Philadelphia may be without Jalen Hurts this week due to a sprained shoulder, and Gardner Minshew would have a brutal time against the Dallas defense if he does miss. Dallas is a top team versus the pass, the low negative .086 EPA per dropback, and a negative 15% pass defense DVOA. They also get pressure at a high 27% clip. Dallas Goedert's return should also diversify the concentrated targets for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. If you have any Eagles shares in fantasy playoffs or best ball, you should pray for Jalen Hurts to play to give this team any chance at upside. Dallas faces a similarly stingy Philly defense that continues to improve in every facet of the game. They've crawled back to a negative .023 EPA on run plays after a positive EPA allowed prior to Jordan Davis's return to the lineup. And their negative .108 EPA on dropbacks is one of the best in the league. They're also number 1 versus wide receiver 1s, number 3 versus wide receiver 2s, and 9th versus tight ends, according to DVOA. Dallas may also need Jalen Hurts to play to push them to score, and otherwise what might be a very defensively minded matchup. Las Vegas and Pittsburgh is the night game on Christmas Eve, and it seems kind of ugly on both sides. Pittsburgh allows a decent .102 EPA on dropbacks, but shuts down the run with a 39.5% rushing success rate allowed. 22% of the touchdowns they've given up have come on the ground, one of the lowest marks in the year. So your Josh Jacobs shares, they might have hit their apex a few weeks ago. On the other side, Kenny Pickett will make his return for the Steelers, and this is a good week to do it. The Raiders' D's 25% passing DVOA boost is one of the worst marks in the league. Same for the .153 EPA they give up per dropback. Pittsburgh's offense showed signs of life last week with Mitch Trubisky at QB, and this is the situation for Pickett to hit his ceiling if he wants to keep pace. We're on to Christmas Day, and the real Christmas miracle would be if you liked this video and subscribe to Splash Play. We've got new videos daily year-round, where I combine my knowledge of football analytics as an SVP at Football Outsiders with the fantasy info that you need to win. So subscribe now and leave a comment. I always reply. Green Bay and Miami easily looks like the most fun game of Christmas Day. Miami defends the run well with a low 39% success rate on rushes, but they struggle on throws under 20 yards with a 75% completion rate allowed and a 48% dropback success rate overall. Miami is 26th in yards per drive allowed with 35.4 as well. Aaron Rodgers could pick up easy chunks of yardage after a solid but unspectacular Week 15. Miami, we know they love to throw, but their big advantage against Green Bay is on the ground. Green Bay gives up a league high 5.2 adjusted line yards per play and stuffs the run at a league low 12% rate. 45% of the yards they give up are on the ground with a high 47.3% rushing success rate. Miami loves the pass, but Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson could be the Christmas gift to love. Russell Wilson is expected to return for Denver versus the Rams, and he had his best game of the year prior to a concussion versus Kansas City. Now he gets a Rams D that gives up a high .129 EPA per dropback and is 31st versus wide receiver 1s and 28th versus wide receiver 2s, according to DVOA. The Broncos are playing for nothing besides Russ's pride, so this could be a week for him to give faith to the Broncos fan base before he dashes it again in 2023. Denver's D remains one of the most shut down in the league, and we know the Rams have nothing. Denver's 12.5% touchdown per drive rate allowed is best in the league. They also give up a league low 27.3 yards per drive, and they force 3 and outs at a strong 31% rate. Baker Mayfield had his only usable game of the year against the league worst Raiders pass D. Don't expect him to come close versus the Broncos. Tampa Bay at Arizona feels like a spot for Tom Brady to rope the suckers in as the Bucs limp into the playoffs. Arizona gives up a league worst 52% dropback success rate. They allow touchdowns a nice 69% of the time that teams get into the red zone. Weirdly, they defend wide receiver 1s well still, second in the league according to DVOA and 4th overall versus wide receiver 2s. Tom Brady should spread the ball around here in a functional effort, much like his and Giselle's future family Christmases. Chargers-Colts is your Monday nighter, and as always seems to be the case, the Chargers should do just enough to win. The Colts give up a high 68% red zone touchdown rate, and they're 27th in the league versus wide receiver 1s. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are in a nice spot, but it may be hard to expect a lot of throws as the Chargers take control early. Indianapolis will move to Nick Foles at QB after their historic collapse in Week 15. And weirdly, Zach Moss might be the most interesting play for Indy. The Chargers struggle with a .03 EPA versus the run and 4.9 adjusted line yards allowed per rush. 41% of the yards they've given up on the year have been on the ground. It's possible nothing gets going here if Nick Foles is more Chicago Foles than Philly Big Dick Nick, but it will be hilarious if Zach Moss wins leagues on a team he didn't even play for when you drafted him. So there you have it, guys. That's everything that I see right now for Week 16. I hope it helps, and I hope you help me by subscribing to Splash Play. We've got new videos daily, and we bust our asses to make it worth your time. So follow me at Chris Spags and follow this show at Splash Play Pod. There will be more football content here over the holidays, but if I don't see you again, I wish you a Merry Christmas Christmas, a happy Hanukkah, and a joyous Kwanzaa. And also, good luck. To quote famous philosopher Mariah Carey, there's only one thing I want for Christmas, and that's you, Jalen Hurts, to put some tape on that shoulder and get out there. My best ball shares a lot of fantasy playoffs out there. They need you, Jalen. I need you, Jalen. MVP futures need you, Jalen. Jalen, just please, just play this game. Play this game.